When rotation's on the horizon, every PTCG YouTuber loves to go over all the best and most consistently placing lists, and usually uses lists from the City League tab on Limitless. But what if instead of looking at the best, most consistently placing decks, what if we tried to find the most unhinged, spicy creations that did decent at these City League events? And before someone in the comments tries to attack me, yes, these events are best of one. Yes, silly things happen. This is an underdeveloped meta. I'm not trying to discourage anyone from cooking up their own pile. I love these kind of decks. With the help of my awesome Discord server, I picked out 10 of the spiciest decks that I could find on the Limitless TCG City League tab. I've ordered these decks from most to least spicy, so by the end of the video, we're gonna have some serious heat. And you know, they used to call me Capsicade way back in the day because of the way I increased the spice.
Bro, nobody ever called you Capsicade.
We're starting us off on the mild side with post-rotation Quad Thorns. This archetype has fallen off pretty steeply since Prismatic Evolution came out and the rise of Dragapult. And this deck does not get a soft landing at all in rotation because DTE is now no longer with us. So this list is trying to make up for it by playing Crispin, but this seems really cope because like Quad Thorns is going to be winning because of how disruptive and annoying it is. So if we're playing Crispin early on to get going, then we're not playing something like a Judge, so that seems pretty bad. I don't even really want to know why we're playing 2 Gravity Mountain and 4 Spike Energy, and I get that defensive tools are way better now that Vacuum is gone, but there is no way that the Lux Bomb is the best ace spec we can be playing in our deck. Well, it's kind of cool to see people trying to keep the Quad Thorns dream alive. I cannot see this deck having any kind of legs in the new format since most decks are pivoting away from rule box abilities. Have you ever wanted to play the Pokemon in TCG on hard mode? Well, then I got the deck for you. This deck features our hero, Wo-Chien EX combined with Forretress EX. Then this strategy is just downright hilarious. We're trying to use Forretress EX's ability to explode itself and load up our powerful attackers like Wo-Chien and Ursaluna, then just trying to stage this big comeback play because we put ourselves behind by going Iono our opponent to a low hand size plus counter catcher and knock out whatever important Pokemon are left in play, which honestly may be a bit more realistic now that there's no Manaphy in format, so the opponent can't protect from Covetous Ivy totally destroying their board. And a lot of these knockdown decks tend to be a bit more weaker to Iono because they just don't have an onboard draw engine. I didn't put this deck higher on the list because even though it is really cool, been around for a long time, so some of y'all who've been playing the game for the last year or so might have already seen it. But I wanted to just highlight how without Manaphy, this deck might have some new potential. You may have heard of Dragapult combined with Iron Thorns. Have you heard of Hydreigon combined with Iron Thorns? This deck is trying to use Iron Thorns to buy time while we evo up into Hydreigon and load energies on it so we can hopefully spam a bunch of Obsidians to clear their board, which might be a bit more feasible now that there is no Manaphy. What makes the Pult Thorns pairing kind of work is the supplemental draw of Recon Directive, so we're trying to use the Dunsparce in this build to sort of make up for that. Hydreigon has historically struggled with Pult, so with Lowe's Clefairy now in the deck, then maybe that matchup is kind of fixed. And what's honestly the funniest part of all of this is this deck got second place in the City League, so maybe there's actually real merit to this deck. But then again, Sinistcha got first place, so maybe there isn't merit. I just don't know. I had to make sure my boy got shouted out in this video. Big Bad Scovillan EX is a very funny hand-locking and milling attack that we can combine with stuff like Stamp and Judge and create some pretty funny hand-locking situations, and it's actually surprisingly easy to power up this thing turn 2 thanks to Teal Mask Ogrepon and Energy Switch. We're trying to overcome our really mid damage output by abusing Monkey Dory, but still that's only 170 damage, and that's not a lot, but at least my boy Scovillan is trying. Come on, you gotta understand that not all of these decks are going to be as broken and cool and powerful as Hydreigon and Iron Thorns. It felt pretty easy to call those the bottom 4 spicy decks, the spicy decks that I picked out, but these next 6 decks are so hot that I had to just make a quick separate break to warn you guys, and you might even want to click off this video. Man, I had to take my hoodie off because of how much I was sweating just looking at these decks. And that brings us to a post-rotation take on Great Tusk Mill and how it tries to adapt to an environment without double turbo energy. However, this deck list is a complete disaster, and I'm not even talking about these random non-Great Tusk Pokemon we're playing. So now we only have 6 energies and 1 Earthen Vessel to find them, and our only discard cards, which are very important to be able to use Professor Sada, our Earthen Vessel, Explorer's Guidance, and 1 Ultra Ball. The only logical explanation that I could come up with to describe this monstrosity of a deck was given away by that one of Iona. This list is actually trying to do the opposite of what Great Tusk Mill normally does. It's trying to make our opponent think like we're up against a mill deck, only for it to lose when the opponent has as many cards as possible left in their deck. I would say this deck is absolute trash and nobody should play it. I cannot believe it got 6th place at a City League, but I guess that shows you how powerful just a one of Robo-Stick is in any deck. This 5th deck can be best described as Donk. I mean, other attackers are here, but we're clearly trying to use Brute Bonnet to poison, Volcanion to apply burn, and use Petulant to increase that poison damage, maybe combine Iron Valiant in there, and be able to knock out our opponent's lone active Pokemon on the first turn going first. And that's honestly really cool. And I guess if we fail the Donk, we have these backup attackers like Wellspring, Terrapagos, and Blood Moon. But if we want to use those 3 guys, then why don't we just play Terrabox at that point? To be honest, I might just net deck this exact 60 and grind low ladder with it when everything resets. But I know I'm either going to be winning or losing extremely quickly. The 4th spiciest deck I could find is a hand-locking deck featuring the new ends Purrloin, which lets us look at our opponent's hands and put a card we find there on the bottom. And this can form a potentially really potent hand lock when we can combine it with stuff like Xerosics to lower their hand, and Meddling and Memo to shuffle and reset cards from their hand. The trouble with a lot of these hand locking style decks is they can't really do a lot once the opponent draws out of it, but since this deck has a couple Okidogi EX as a sweeper attacker of sorts, maybe it can overcome that. Not totally sure this deck is consistent at all. I'm kind of leaning towards no because we're playing 4 copies of Xerosic, Grabber, Memo, and Ents PPL, but at the very least, this deck seemed like a super fun thing to take to locals and troll some people with. Our bronze metal pile of a deck is another Hydreigon list. This one is extremely different than that Thorns one. This version is trying to use Lapras's 3 energy attack to set up Hydreigon's 4 energy attack, and then I assume sweep by pressing Obsidian a bunch of times. All of this sounds great until you realize this deck has no actual draw support, no Pokemon or supporters, so our Noctowl is gonna have to do some very heavy lifting. I don't even want to imagine what happens if we get item locked. So I guess this deck wouldn't be so bad if we are assuming that we can just use Obsidian 2 to 3 times and that wins us the game. But honestly, I'm not sure this deck sets up and often enough for that to actually happen. Nonetheless, it's cool to see Lapras get a bit of play. I remember when that card was first revealed and everyone said there's no way this Pokemon card is real. It's looking at 20 cards at once. Our 2nd place spicy deck is the insane combination of Ting-Lu and Ceruldege, and to be perfectly honest, I kind of forgot Ting-Lu existed. I don't really know how these two synergize together at all. Like with Ceruldege, you'd want something that either trades really good with single prize Pokemon or is dependable and low maintenance in the early game to kind of make up for a Ceruldege needing a bit of time to set up. So I guess the combo of Hitmonlee and Ting-Lu to shut off Dracloaks and Noctowls would buy enough time for Ceruldege to start one-hitting stuff. I don't really know. There's a lot of questions I don't think we'll ever get answers for. Yeah, just overall an absolutely unhinged deck, but I kind of want to try it. And now for the spiciest deck that I could find from a Journey Together post-rotation City League. And to be honest, I don't think the gap between 1st and 2nd is actually that close. I'm gonna call this deck Totodile Mill. It involves using Totodile to lock something in the active, but the trouble with Totodile is that it does damage, so we can't permanently hold locks as we'll eventually knock out our opponent. So this is where Chandelure comes in to force feed our opponent's cards to get them closer to decking out, which we can then throw away with Xerosic and repeat that cycle over and over again until they eventually deck out. I have to imagine this is very impractical to set up. If our opponent is smart, they could just throw away liability Pokemon and we wouldn't really have any hope of setting up a win condition, and a strategy like this probably gets destroyed by anything that can apply pressure on our bench or KO multiple Pokemon at once. But at the very least, I want to give whoever made this deck a C for creativity, because this deck is flipping awesome. Those were the 10 spiciest decks that I could find on the Limitless City League page, and if you don't believe me that these decks actually top 16 of City League, I'll put links to all of them in the description below so you can see for yourself. I really appreciate all the support on the channel lately. As always, huge shout out to Endgame, TC Evolutions, and Blue Ditto for sponsoring me as a creator, and also for just having dope products. If you want to hear about decks that are actually good, I made a video going over all the different archetypes that got top 16 at the recent Champions League. I'm gonna put it on screen right here, so you better go check it out.